Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Butterfly Effect podcast. Today, me and Liam are doing a review of the latest FMV that we have played, titled I Saw Black Clouds. It is the second horror FMV that we have done on the channel, the first being Erica, so if you wanted to see our review on that, do go into the FMV playlist on our channel. But mate, I Saw Black Clouds, how did it stand up to you from like the one playthrough that we did together?
Um, it was a game. I'll give it that much. It's difficult to sort of comment. Like, I didn't absolutely hate it. This is no Who Pressed Me on Uncle Marcus. For me, that was like the worst. But this is probably a little bit above it. If I'm gonna start from the top here with an overall score for it, it gets like a 4 out of 10, maybe. There's just a lot about the game that really falls flat, that's really confusing, and stylistically, I just think is a little clumsy. I appreciate what it tried to do. It's certainly bold, and it's very unique. And at the end of the day, it is going to be like a Wells interactive game, so it will be that movie format, so at least that can keep you slightly engaged. But ultimately, I think we played it maybe a month ago, and I had to refresh before doing this recording because it didn't stick with me as much as you'd probably hope it would do, to be honest, mate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure I finished my first playthrough and I was bang underwhelmed, especially with it being a horror, especially with it being in that typical movie format on the back of Uncle Mark, because I was hoping for something really, really good. And you know what? From like the trailers that I'd seen, I was like, wow, like this has potential, you know. But you know, as I will go into, one thing I should mention, guys, actually, is that there will be a section in this video where we'll start going into, you know, spoilers of the plot, etc. But we'll let you know of that in time. But ultimately, it felt something was lacking here. Do I think that it got better in, you know, future playthroughs? Yes. But in terms of my ranking of the ones we've played so far, I think this is like mid to lower, this game. I can't see it getting any higher than that. Okay, so before we do get into the spoilers, where did you want to start, mate? Maybe the acting?
Yeah, the acting. I mean, it's tough because, like, the characters aren't bad per se, but I think the nature of the script and the story doesn't allow a lot of the actors to perform super well. So I think there were times where you might have like quite a traumatic scene that happened previously, and then in the next, your main Christina might be quite a vacant face. And I feel like potentially they didn't take into account certain choices that happened. So in the next scene, her default was to be vacant to kind of accommodate all playthroughs potentially, and it didn't quite land for me. There were some performances in there which I thought were pretty good, like her best friend Charlotte, like she gives like these really harrowing screams when she's tied up at one point. I thought she did a really sterling job. That kind of, you know, stuck with me a lot as well. But again, I'm not going away from this game remembering the characters. I had to look up what the names of the characters were, for example. So yeah, like certainly not memorable by any stretch, but you know, like they weren't woeful. Like again, way better than Uncle Marcus, mate.
It's funny, I've literally got the same thing written down here. Not word for word, obviously, that would be creepy. But I did say acting was okay, but the characters are forgettable. And I felt that neatly sums up what you've just said, really. Probably should go into the plot, really. Let's talk about the story. So it's essentially this character called Christina, who comes back to her village because her friend has mysteriously died, believed to have committed suicide. And then the object of the game is for you to presumably work out what happened to her, and the plot goes from there. And of course, we'll do spoilers later on. In terms of the story and the pacing of it and the way the scenes were knitted together, lad, I don't know about you, I felt this was perhaps the weakest part of this game, because the number of times where, certainly in our first playthrough, the scenes were very rushed, don't know if that's because of the choices we made, but even sometimes when it was cutting after a choice, the music was really jarring. It would cut out and then come back in. And there didn't feel like a level of cohesion to it, and I was sort of finding myself having to guess what was going on a lot of the time. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I fully agree with you, especially the point about the music. I actually felt the soundtrack was fairly strong, but it just felt so disjointed by the way that, you know, you might have Christina like wandering around a house, for example, and then it will fade to black, and then the next scene comes and suddenly she's in a forest, and the music cuts with the scene, and it's super choppy, and it almost feels like amateur hour in terms of like the editing front, and you don't expect it from Wells Interactive, especially because we know how capable they are with projects like The Complex and Late Shift. So we know these guys are capable of like editing very well. But this game just felt very disjointed in terms of the scenes. The pacing felt really off. So yeah, I'm fully in agreement with you.
I think it neatly takes us on to the choice as well, which is another thing I'm going to have to address that I think is pretty weak. Obviously, we'll go into the endings later on, because there is obviously some choice nature to this, because there are 4 endings. I think personally that there's really 2, but nonetheless, there are 4 official endings. But again, I mean, we even made a short about it because it was that bad, wasn't it, mate? There's one particular bit where you're in this house, you're creeping around, and you get to pick what room to go in. You could go in the bedroom, the bathroom, I think, or you can go into the back corridor to snoop around. And we put it out, didn't we? We said, okay, guys, on the chat, tell us where you want us to go. They picked the bedroom, and then you pick the bedroom, and she steps in the doorway, glances in, you don't follow her in. She then comes back out and stands in the exact same spot, and you've got the choice again. And I'm thinking to myself, what is the point? Like, what is the point of having that choice there? So the linearity of it was a big issue. And I think sometimes when you get these films where they throw loads of choices, you think, oh my God, this is great. When in reality, and this game does this a lot, is that when you pick one option out of 2 or one option out of 3, maybe a character just doesn't say anything and there's an awkward silence, and then it just gears you back into the script as to what you should have picked in their eyes, like in quotation marks. So yeah, that was a big letdown for me. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Oh, massively so. And it is like potentially the biggest flaw of the game here. And because we pretty much did like the one playthrough, mate, so I wanted to kind of go back and look at some other playthroughs online. And I didn't realize how bad the linearity was. For example, there might be like a scene where you're in the forest and it says, "I'll go left or go right." And if you pick go left, she'll look left and then go right anyway. There's a scene where like you can say, "Oh, do you want to go out for drinks?" which is what we did, but you can also choose to go for a run instead. If she goes for a run, she will jog, and that'll be like a 5-second scene, and then she goes out for drinks anyway. There's so many instances like this, lad. Like, you can like check on a potential ghost that's in your house or go back to sleep. If you go back to sleep in later scenes, she'll say, "Oh, I saw a ghost." So it completely negates your choices. And the thing with it as well, mate, is that the timer might run out and it will pick a choice for you. And it clearly picks the choices that it wants you to pick as well. So like, you could pretty much put your controller down and the game will force you into doing what you want to do. And that will probably be quicker than you choosing other options that it's going to put you on course to do anyway. So yeah, like, this game will probably make you feel like, probably like uni party days, mate. Like, you're such a third wheel, like, you don't need to be here. Like, the game just completely blocks you out and ignores you and does its own thing anyway. So yeah, like, we review choice-based games on this channel, and in terms of the choice element for this game, it's actually borderline insulting, to be honest, how bad it was, mate.
And there's a little fun fact, mate, that will just drum that point home even more. So you know the ending that we got, right?
Yeah.
Imagine we forgot about that, right? we were hypnotised, we forgot about it, and someone come up to us and just said, right, what I want you to do is play this game, you're not make any choices, you're just going to skip the way through it, right? We would have got the same ending as what we had.
Really?
Really? Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay, well, there you go then. So, yeah, we did not need to be there, mate. You could have given you, like, fingers and thumbs a rest from hitting buttons on the controller then.
This is it. So when you hit the pause menu and you see that there's over 550 scenes that can be seen, you think, oh wow, this is great. But a lot of the little scenes are so insignificant that you think, okay, they've literally just done that to like plump up the numbers and make it more impressive than it is. So if choices are what you're looking for in this, sure, you get 4 endings. I secretly think 2, but you get 4 endings, but the choices themselves are not that great in my opinion. While we're talking about the menu, we can also speak about the personality trait bars. You have like denial and acceptance. Now, I won't go into too much detail because you'll notice, guys, I've not really spoke about the plot of this game too much, but we are going to leave that for the spoiler section because it is so ingrained into it. So you also have other like personality trait bars where you get to see or shape, again, big quotation marks, the character that Christina is. But I'd say that there is more emphasis on the other bars regarding her denial and her acceptance. They, I would say, are more influencing on the endings that you get. So, unless there's anything else you wanted to bring up, lad, shall we move into story territory and therefore spoiler territory?
Yeah, for sure. I just want to kind of add that you mentioned that like you do the choices and it affects like acceptance, denial, those categories. I think those are pivotal to affecting like which endings you get potentially. But one criticism I also want to give is just that it doesn't really kind of like give you the feeling like you're affecting those like sort of relationships or those bars as you play. So I think that is a bit of an evident flaw as well, in my opinion. But I am happy to go into story now.
Sweet. Okay, so I've already given you guys sort of the plot outline, but we're in spoiler territory now. So essentially, first half of the game, or at least in our case it was, is all in Christina's head. Now, we've been here before, we've seen it with Little Hope that it was all a dream. So basically what this ending is that Christina, it wasn't actually her friend Emily that had committed suicide. It was a situation whereby her friend Charlotte and her got caught out by a bunch of strangers who took them to a remote place, and they ultimately killed Charlotte. And Christina, she struggled with the guilt of leaving Charlotte by herself in that situation. Hence why she's starting to manifest all these things, and all these characters that you meet in the first half were coming back in different ways. One of the guys, for example, one of the perpetrators in her head was actually her therapist, because she has like a problem with authority, or as he explains it. So before we go any further, mate, we've obviously seen this before, that it was all in her head ending. Did you like it in this game?
To be honest, not really. I admire the ambition, but it's just sort of too convoluted, too confusing for me. And also it sort of negates just... It makes the first half, or the first 2/3 of the game, almost pointless because they didn't really happen. So I'm not really a fan of that style of game alone anyway. But also there's just like a few things, like one character that was actually like helping you throughout the game. I believe his name was Jack, right? Even though he looked like me, but he was called your name. So like,
that's a creep, by the way.
Exactly. Helping you throughout the game, and then like it turns out he was actually a bad person. So like I don't know, like, and then there's just other characters that doesn't quite tie up to. So I was just a little bit confused by it. So I quite like what they did at the end, because I remember when we played it, like we tried to save Charlotte and then it reset us, and I was like, I see what it's doing. It wants us to walk out the door because something's going to go down, and I kind of called that. But yeah, like, I don't know, maybe I'm just a little bit iffy with those twists. admire the ambition, but I just think, I don't know, it made up so much stuff that just didn't really, kind of gel together well enough for me. I don't know if you feel the same.
I do, yeah. And I mean, it really is in that latter half where it tends to matter. The choices in the first half, which I'll go into now. Obviously, in our playthrough, I'm pretty sure. This is, by the way, I don't know this for fact, but I'm pretty sure in the scenes with Dominique, the female therapist that you meet towards the start, I think that choices there that you make do have an impact on what you see in the first half. Because I believe in our playthrough, I said, oh yeah, I don't believe in ghosts, X, Y, and Z, and the supernatural and all that jazz, right? So therefore, when we was in that abandoned building, it was more sort of psychological horror, wasn't it? In that it was like a masked killer, or it was sort of more grounded, you could say.
Yeah.
Whereas, actually, when I did the second playthrough and I picked supernatural, it was far more interesting. And I think that actually this is where I will give it its props. Things just started to make a little bit more sense on the horror front, and actually there was some nice story expansion stuff too. So to give a little example, when you visit Alexander, like the therapist guy, but obviously not the therapist guy in the in her head, he gives like this whole backstory about how he was like the heir to some guy who had an affair with some woman who then fell pregnant, and that's her spirit that's haunting the house, and he ultimately had to burn the house, and she's following. And it was like, I think it was, what was the girl's name called? Elga or something, or Elgon or something. I can't remember. Maybe you guys in the chat can correct me. But there's an achievement for it, and it gave it a little bit more sort of story, and almost like you was watching a horror film. So like, I did appreciate that, especially given how in our first playthrough, like I said, things felt very quick, very rushed when you were meeting people. And another thing as well, you got to meet more characters. Like, I met this priest guy, and he gave me a little bit of the background on this woman as well, that was, having an affair and having a kid with, the ancestor of this Alexander guy. So there were some like pretty neat things. I do think the supernatural element worked well. You got some genuine horror moments, which I think worked more than when it was just like one of the men chasing you down with a mask. And it therefore paid more homage to what the trailers were offering you, or what they were really trying to push on you. But I think going into the endings, because I think that's really what people want to know about, I personally think there's two. One's called Denial, and I'm pretty sure this one is the one where you don't play the second half. If you pick all the right options, then it actually works out that she doesn't wake up from her little therapy thing with Alexander. It's just you play the first half of the story, and you don't. Oh no, sorry, tell her, like, that's the unfinished one. That's the unfinished ending. Denial is the one where you do the whole thing, you circle round, you come back, you maybe save Charlotte, or run away from Charlotte. But the options that you picked mean that there is still a little bit of denial in there. And this is where I say the acceptance and the denial bars really come in. It's like you have to be pretty much all in for denial in order to get this ending, even if you have a little bit of acceptance. And it's the same the other way round. Like, if you've got all acceptance and you've picked all the right options, you'll then get the clear ending, whereby she doesn't have any visions of Emily anymore when she goes to the grave, or when she goes for like a little jog. And then the other one is the end ending, which is the one we got, mate, which, do you know what I mean, was pretty shite, and we could have literally skipped the whole game to get it. So hopefully I explained that well enough. It is a little bit confusing, but what do you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the game would have been better if we had the supernatural elements potentially. But I like that it kind of rewards you, and it does seem like there is replayability value. And I remember when you messaged me the other day to say, I've played it again, and the game has gone up in my estimations just a little bit because of this whole branching thing. And like, fair play, I might have seen the weaker side of it. So that is something I am willing to tip my, hat off for it. But I will just kind of like say that there's a lot that that this game needs to be salvaged for, and I just don't think that completely like I'm just giving it a 4 out of 10. I don't think that's gonna make it a good game. Like that could maybe make it a 5 out of 10. That's still not a good score, kind of thing. So I mean, it was a nice little experiment. I'm glad we tried it. There are still a lot of things about this game that I do like. For example, like the locations. That's something we've not really touched on. I thought they were pretty good. I feel like maybe chilling because it's set in the UK. And there was some pretty cool places, like the mansions, the like abandoned like asylum looking place was pretty creepy. And it was in Shropshire, which is sort of like a place that, you don't really see a lot of movies and stuff there. So I quite like that. And I admired the ambition of it. But for me, this game didn't land, lad. And unfortunately, I don't know if like that supernatural version can save it.
No, neither. Like I say, it has gone up, but not by a hell of a lot. Like if I'm comparing it to say even the complex, maybe, it's not getting above that. So mid to lower tier, I think, is ultimately where it'll be when we come around to do a ranking on this. I think one little final of positivity I will give the game, though. I'm assuming it was intentional, and it is like spoiler territory. But it does sort of try to give like little foreshadowing hints. So one thing that I picked up when I was playing was just how white Charlotte's face was, and I was thinking, oh, maybe someone's overdone the makeup or something. But obviously, knowing where the story goes, and even that little scene where you're walking by the road and you see two crosses and Charlotte's name is on one of them, I'm thinking, okay, is this like a potential little hint that they're saying that she is dead? And I think that playing that again, you get more appreciation for it, because in your blind playthrough, you're almost taking everything at face value. So there's like little sprinklings of like good writing in here, but overall, I don't think the actors had a lot to work with. It was very choppy, and I don't think this one, even just looking in the community, has particularly gone down well. And I wouldn't even say it's like the strongest horror that I've played in the FMV series, and I've only played 2. So, that doesn't say a hell of a lot either.
Yeah, like, and that's the thing. We laughed a lot throughout our playthrough, right? And when it presents itself as a horror game, you almost have to punish it. Like, I had fun playing it with you, but unfortunately, it's a horror game, and we were laughing our socks off when we were playing it. So I don't think we were supposed to be.
Yeah, so that's it, guys. Obviously, that was our review for I Saw Black Clouds. Is there anything we missed? Is there anything that you want to correct us on in the comments below? Obviously, do let us know. We'll read and reply to them. And one bit of housekeeping before we leave is we're going to reveal what we're covering next in the FMV series, which is Bloodshaw. So if you have just found us and you like FMV games, maybe subscribe to the channel, because we're going to be doing these games. I'll be putting a post out fairly soon as to where you can find us on our Twitch for when we stream it, and we'll ultimately get around to reviewing that one as well. So hope you enjoyed the video, and we will see you in the next one.
See you guys soon. Take care.